Okay, on this video what we're going to do is start the assembly process. Now, we'll start the assembly process, and we won't go through the whole assembly on this video. That probably would take a little too much time. We'll show you a couple of parts assembled, then we'll show you how to change colors, and then eventually in a later video we'll show you how to put in these commercial parts, hex cap screws and nuts and washers and different things like that. It's a process called the Content Center, which is basically a compilation of a library of parts that are standard hardware type parts that comes with Autodesk Inventor, and very useful as far as creating an assembly in a very efficient manner. So that's kind of the procedures we're going to go through here. And again, we'll make it several videos. There's just too much going on here to create it all at once. First thing we have to do is go to the New button. And this time, instead of creating standard .ipt type parts, or for that matter, metric IPTs, we're going to create an assembly model, and that's the standard IAM, standard.iam for Inventor Assembly Modeling. So we'll create that, and I'll get this over here out of get it kind of oriented like I want it. Okay, and now note the ribbons across the top are completely different than what they were with the assembly or the part model. And the browser is different. It says this is an assembly as opposed to a part. So there's a little bit different interface based on the fact that we're in an assembly model instead of a part model. Different things across the top: assembly, design, model. Model was first over here in the part modeling. Inspect, tools, manage, view. Some of those are still the same, but we're in the assembly mode. Now the first thing we need to do is place some parts. So we'll go in here and hit place, and we have to go back and find the folder that we're working out of, and this is pipe vise in this case. And we have to go in there then and find the various parts that we need. The base is the first one that we wanted, wasn't it? Okay, so we can go in there and insert that if we want. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get the base. There we go, and open that up, and it's inserted. Now if you keep clicking, it'll just keep inserting parts. We only need that one, so we'll hit escape, and we can rotate that around so we can see, okay, there's our part. Now, several things. Notice over here in the browser there's like a push pin over top of the part. That tells me that that part is grounded. If I right click, you can see that that part is grounded. That means it won't move. It's going to stay where it's at. Some of these other parts, they can move and will move, but we want that one grounded. I will caution you about this. If you put this assembly together and you get it close and hit grounded so that it looks like it's going to be in the right spot and stay there, I know that game. That's not the way this works. You have to constrain the parts. If you don't constrain them, if you ground them, for instance, if I grounded this instead of constraining it, this piece would not pivot about a point here. Right now it won't pivot because I've got it inserted in so many different places that it's locked in. If I take some of those inserts out, this thing would move. It would pivot about a point here, much like this piece right here is rotating and moving up and down. If you went in there and grounded this rod, this adjusting screw, okay, it won't move now. Well, that's not the intent of this modeling technique. So you need to be able to move that thing like it would be moving in the real world. So just keep that in mind. So that's our first part. Well, you might choose to go ahead and place some more parts. Nice thing about it, once I get into that folder, it'll stay there. But I need this screw. If I hold the control key down, I can go through and pick some of these different pieces. Just get all that you need. That appears to be all of them, and I can hit open, and one click, and escape, and I've got those other pieces in there. Now, some of them, I'm going to need more than one. I'm going to need more than one of this one. So I probably should have inserted that twice. That's the bottom jaw. And again, I can right click and done. And I've got two of those in now. And all of these different pieces, notice none of them have push pins on them, so they can all be moved around. In fact, I will move them a little bit closer to where they're going to be used. Also note that several of these aren't oriented like they normally would be. That's not a problem at all. We'll be able to get them where they need to be using the constraints. In other words, this piece right here has to be flipped 90 degrees to fit in here, doesn't it, according to the way this looks. Well, that's not a problem. We can do that easy enough. In fact, that's what we're going to start on. Well, first, let's go ahead and save this part. And we're going to call that the Vise assembly video file. Okay. Now, so the name of this game is to constrain things, much like we did sketches in the parts. And the constraint is right here, or you can just type in a C, and it brings up a dialog box. Looks something like this. You got four options here. You've got mate, and within the mate there are actually two options. You can mate things face to face, or you can mate faces that are flush. And we've got angle, and we've got different solutions for that. And you've got tangent, and it could be tangent inside or tangent outside. And then we've got insert. Now, insert I really like. Insert will do two things at once. It will make sure that the faces that you pick mate up, and it will also make sure that the axes of the two cylindrical shapes mate up. Whereas if we just use mate, it would either make the faces mate up, or you could make the axes of two cylinders mate up, but you can't do both at the same time. So insert really will help you there. And insert will allow you to change the orientation. So if I pick this face right here, and it's that circle, and notice it put the pointer on there. And then if I pick this circle right here, okay, I apologize for that loud sound of that click. So what it did was it reoriented that thing and made sure that those two arrows were opposed to each other, which is what it's saying here. If you come over here and align them, then it flips that thing backwards so that both of them are going the same direction. However, we don't want that to be flipped like that. So we could say okay, and then you can see that if we're done with that, well, sorry, I'm hitting some buttons here wrong. Okay. Problem was this thing will rotate continuous. Okay, but now note it's rotating about that hole in it. So that's those two axes of those holes are concentric with each other now, and it locks that in. And what we're doing is we're locking in the number of degrees of freedom this thing has. Well, one thing you'll note is if we zoom in on that, too much. If we zoom in there, you'll note that this is flush face to face, and we've got a gap here. Well, that's kind of problematic And we want to try to, what we'll do on this is we want to get that gap evened up on both sides. Well, when we did our insert, we had an option there that I didn't show you that allows you to offset that face by a value. Now, this is, here's our fork, and then here's our base. And note, if we expand that base, we can now see that there's an insert constraint between that and this fork. Sorry, I got the wrong drawing there. In the fork, there's an insert 1. So that's the same insert. And you can see it highlight over here when we pick on it. Well, what we've got to do, and note when I hit that insert down at the bottom left-hand corner, it shows that the offset between those is 0. Well, what we've got to do is figure out what the distance is between these two faces. So that's exactly what we're going to do. But first I'm going to hit save. I like that. I just need to move it. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this around. And we can either go inspect, distance, and we want to grab that face. Then we're going to rotate around here. I'm going to have to move over this way a little bit and grab this face. And it says that it's 63 thousandths between those two faces. And if we rotate this around, and there's my line right there that's measuring that 63 thousandths. The little red line you see there in the middle of the screen. Okay, that's the distance between those two faces. Pick the faces, and it'll give you a perpendicular distance between the two. So if it's 0.063, what I want to do is go to this insert and just type in 0.063 divided by 2, enter, and you could see it move. So now that thing is centered between those two faces. And that's how we want that to be. Now, in the real world, that thing wouldn't stay centered. It would move back and forth on that axis. But for now, we want to leave that centered just like it is. Now, if we'd happen to go in there and do an insert or even a mate, this thing right now will move around here. Well, if we wanted to lock it down, we could go back to the constraints and do a mate. And as long as we touch this cylinder, it got the axis of that, although I don't think I got it. Let's zoom in a little bit. So we got this axis, and we got this axis. And when it makes that click noise, that means it's going to accept it. It likes what you did, and it can live with that. If we hit apply or OK, it will lock that in now. And this piece can no longer move. So we locked in every degree of freedom, and there should be 6. It should be able to move along the x-axis, along the y, and along the z, and it should be able to rotate around all 3 of those axes. If you lock it in, though, you're stopping all those constraints. Now we can see the mate here, and we can see it down here in the browser. And then if we want, we can delete that, and I do want to delete it. I want that thing to still be able to move. Okay, and although eventually I guess I wouldn't, so I'm just going to undo that. Or better yet, let's do it again. Constrain, and I'm going to go in there, and I can get either one of these cylinders. I'm going to rotate that around a little bit, grab that axis, and hit OK. So that's locked in. I'm good to go on it. As long as this piece won't move, this won't move now. Or if it does move, they'll move together. So let's unground, if you will, this piece. But notice now they move together. So just something that you might want to keep an eye on. Okay, those are all locked in. As far as the colors are concerned, if I go to that pipe base or Vise base and right click on that and go to Eye Properties. Brings up a dialog box. Looks much like the dialog box you've been using in your other classes to control what these all say as far as how they're created. But if I go to occurrence here, so for this particular base occurrence, if I go to color style, and let's say I change that to another color, let's see what we can find. We've got about every color in the rainbow there, don't we? Let's see. Let's go turquoise. What the heck? Okay. So that allows you to change that part. Whereas just like with this, if I've got this piece here, the guide, and then I've got the guide threaded, well, that's not a good example. Later on when we do some screws, we'll talk about the different, if you've got one, well, here's the good part. We've got these two jaws that they're exactly the same, the bottom jaw here and the bottom jaw there. It's the exact same piece. They came from the same model. That's why they're both yellow. But I can go in there, right click, Eye Properties, and go to that occurrence and choose to make that a different color. Let's make it light beige. What the heck? Okay. So that's totally different than the one that's, again, it came from the same model, part model, but now we've changed the color of them. So if you wanted, we could put those in place. Again, they're oriented so that they're not exactly right, if you will. They're 90 degrees off. So we'll go ahead and constrain, and we'll do an insert, and we'll pick that circular face there, and then let's just pick that one. Now those arrows are opposing each other, so they'll flip right where they need to be, and we'll hit OK. Now, so that means that thing's done, right? Not necessarily. When you create that insert, note this piece will still spin, so that can be a problem. Well, if there's a gap between, let's say, this face right here and the face that mates up to, which would be this face right here, if there's a gap there, then you can't use the mate feature. You would have to use the angle feature. You can angle faces, or you can angle lines. Waiting for that to move. Okay, so right now it's at 0, and you can see that it actually pivoted that thing so that this is 0 compared to the other one. Well, if I went in there and said, I don't want it to be 0, I want it to be 180, so that it brings that around the other way. Okay, and it flipped it around, and I went ahead and accepted it. But let's go in there and look at that. There's your angle. It's 180 right now. Well, again, down here in the lower left-hand corner, let's type in 90 and hit enter. And there you go. That's not really what we wanted. But notice the pointer is at 90 degrees relative to the other face. So we really wanted 180. And we'll just accept that and be done with that. Okay, so, and I think, if I remember correctly, there is a gap in there. See, there's a gap there and a gap there. So if you tried to do a mate, it wouldn't let you do it for the simple fact that it can't, because of this hole being where it's at, it can't put that over, push that over, mate it, because the hole is keeping that from happening, the insert that we had there. So you have to be careful on that. You know, sometimes you have to get creative and do things a little differently. With that, you know, that being said, the insert takes care of this. If we didn't use the insert, we would have to grab this face and that face and lock that in. Then we would have to go in there and somehow, like that, move it up out of the way. we would have to go in and grab this axis right here, and then grab the axis of this hole here, move that around a little bit, and apply that. And then we'd have to go in there and I'm not sure we can do this because I don't remember how the width of this was, but I'm going to grab this face and that face. And it acts like it doesn't like it. Let's see if we hit OK, see what it does. Yeah, see it says, sorry, you can't do that because this face has a different distance from the hole to that face than the hole does to this face on this piece. So it won't allow you to do that. So this thing can still spin. Now what you could do is you could go angle, pick this face and that face, and it lines it up. 3 steps to get that done. Okay, so if I go in here and pick this, notice I've got a mate, and an angle. Well, if I want to go in there and I'm going to delete those out, and let me back up there a second. I held the mouse on the first one, clicked it, held the shift key on my keyboard, clicked the last one, and I got all 3 at once. So that this thing can move again. You can get that in 2 steps by going to Insert, pick this. Now, again, you have to pick this top circle. If you pick the bottom one, you'll see here in a second what happens. It's going to make the 2 bottoms up. That's really not what you were after, is it? So just be careful of that. When you do that insert, make sure you grab the top circle there. And then we want to grab the bottom circle on this one. And apply that. Okay, but this thing will still, this thing will still spin. So then I still have to go in there and do my, I'm going to do my angle again, this face and that face. Say OK, and those 2 jaws are done. So it's coming together here pretty well. And earlier when I created that on that pipe vise base, when I went in there and put that, let's see, where was it? This mate right here. If I take that out, this whole thing pivots, right? If I want to set that at a particular angle, if I want this to be open or closed to a certain amount, realize what I can do is I can go in there and do the angle constraint, and maybe I want to pick just a line here. Okay, there's, I don't want the face, I want that line. And then I could pick a line or a face for that matter. I'll pick that one. It's 0. Well, let's make it 45. Except for I need to flip it, don't I? I need that to be a negative 45. See what that does to it. And I need to go more than that. Let's see. Let's go. Let's go negative 135. Okay, so and I could leave that like that. So that thing will never move, and it's off at an angle. You know, you might need to show some kind of a setup so that you could tell how far, what size of pipe or something like that could go in there. Now, what I'll do is I'll just set that back at 0. 0's not right. I'll have to go 180. That might still have to take care of it. How about 90? We'll just keep messing with it until we get it. How about minus 90? Okay, that locks it in. Okay, so we're locked in there. And so we'll stop there, and we'll come back and get the rest of these parts placed where they need to be. and then, like I said, we'll put some bolts and things in it.